Hi, hello there. Welcome to Legacy Inter-VLAN routing video demo. This video is a supplementary video of the video lecture on Inter-VLAN. Legacy Inter-VLAN routing. Let's have a demonstration of the Legacy Inter-VLAN routing. Okay, now I'm going to create the topology here. Okay, so I already have drafted the components. Okay, so I just have to connect this. I have here router, switch, and 4 workstations. So I'm going to create 2 VLANs, VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. So assigning FA01 to 5 to VLAN 10 with subnet 172.16.10.0/24. For VLAN 20, you've got FA06 to 10, 172.16.20.0/24. So I'm going to use the last usable IP as the default gateway of these computers here. Okay, now let us start with connecting these devices. Let me connect PC1. Okay, so I could connect from 1 to 5. So let me just connect on 1. Okay, same thing with PC2 here. Okay, so let me connect it to FA02. Next would be PC3. I can connect from 6 to 10. Let me connect on 6. Okay, and also PC4 connected to 7 here. So we could connect from 6 to 10. Alright, so next is we need to connect the switch. Okay, so I could use any from 1 to 5. Let me just use 5 here and then connect it to Gigabit Ethernet 00 here. Okay, Gigabit Ethernet 01 for VLAN 20, and let me connect it to in interfaces from 6 to 10. Let me use 10. Alright, so basically in the Inter-VLAN routing or Legacy Inter-VLAN routing, actual routers were used to route between VLANs. So each VLAN here, which is VLAN 10 and VLAN 20, was connected to a different physical router interfaces. So packets would arrive on the router through one interface, okay, be routed and then leave through another interface. So because the router interfaces were connected to VLANs and had an IP address from that specific VLAN, routing between VLANs was achieved. Large networks with large number of VLANs requires many router interfaces. Okay, now Legacy Inter-VLAN routing requires routers to have multiple physical interfaces. Each one of the router's physical interface is connected to a unique VLAN. Each interface is also configured with an IP address for the subnet associated with a particular VLAN. In this case here, okay, so we will be using this interface here. Okay, so that is, okay, so this is G01, okay, and G0, okay, so let's have these interfaces here. Now, okay, so enable, and then let's have here show IP interface brief. Okay, so I have here G00 and G01, okay, so as interfaces to be connected to each of the VLAN here, VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. Okay, so network devices use the router as a gateway to access the devices connected to the other VLAN. So let's assign an IP address on these workstations here. Okay, now this is our PC1 here, so let's assign 172.16.10.1 for instance. This is /24. Okay, default gateway would be the last usable IP. In that case, that's 172.16.10.254. Alright, now for PC2, okay, so for PC2, you're gonna have 172.16.10.2. okay, this would be /24, so that would be 255.0. Default gateway is 172.16.10.254. So we're done with VLAN 10 workstations, PC1 and PC2. Let's move on VLAN 20 workstations here. Okay, so for PC3, what's 72.16.20? Okay, dot 1, that's last 24. You've got 255 here. Default gateway is 172.16.20.254. Alright, last would be PC4. Okay, so for PC4, 172.16.20.2, this is slash 24 also, so 255.0. Gateway would be 172.16.20.254. Alright, so we're done with the IP assignments on the workstations. So let's configure our switch here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so switch, let's have here configure terminal. Let's assign the host name S1 for instance. Let's check the VLAN. So show, we're inside the config, so do show VLAN. So if you can see here, okay, so we don't have a user defined VLAN, and all interfaces are assigned to the default VLAN, which is VLAN 1. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to create a VLAN. Okay, so from this topology here, we will be creating 2 VLANs. Okay, so let's start. For VLAN 10, so VLAN 10, let's name it student for instance. Next would be VLAN 20, and then name, say this is faculty. Alright, so we have 2 VLANs. Do show VLANs. Alright, so we have successfully created 2 VLANs here, 10 and 20. So the next thing to do is let us assign the interfaces for VLAN 10 and 20 respectively. So from the given here, let's do it. So interface range FA0/1, okay, so to 5. Okay, so we are going to assign it to VLAN 10. So that is switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10. Alright, so we have to do the same on interface range FA0/6 to 10, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20. Let's check it. Do show VLAN. Alright, so do show VLAN. So we have successfully assigned 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 to VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 respectively. Okay, so next. So after doing that, we could already check the VLANs. Okay, so take note that VLAN 1 or VLAN 10, PC1 and PC2 here should be able to ping each other. So let's check that. Let's fast forward time. Alright, so let's try to ping PC1 and PC2. So it is successful. So you have the VLAN there. Next, let's test PC3 and PC4. They should be able to communicate because they are on the same VLAN. But okay, if we are trying to ping PC1, okay, PC3, that would be unsuccessful or failed. Same thing with PC2 and PC4. Why? Because they are on a different VLAN. Now, the purpose of inter-VLAN here is that we should be able to provide communication between these 2 VLANs here. So after we have configured this legacy inter-VLAN routing, so these 2 here, which were failed, will be able to be successful and be able to connect. Alright, so let's do it. So we are done with the switch. The next thing is, let's do it on the router. Alright, so for the router, so I'll be using Gigabit Ethernet 00. Okay, so let me start the configuration. Configure terminal. Alright, let's start with the host name. This is R1 here. Okay, so interface G0/0, that is our connection to VLAN 10. Okay, so let me assign an IP address here. So IP address 172.16.10.254, 255.255.255.0. Okay, and then no shutdown. So let's do the same with interface G0/1. Okay, so IP address 172.16.20.254, 255.255.255.0, and then no shutdown. All right, so let's check. Let's verify it. Do show IP interface brief. So our gigabit Ethernet 00 belongs to VLAN 10, okay, by assigning the last usable IP on 172.16.10.0. And so with gigabit Ethernet 01 on VLAN 20. Okay, so as you can see here, status is up, protocol is up. All right, now let's have some forwarding here, fast forward time. This was earlier failed. Okay, so let's see if we can now have the connection. All right, so and it is now successful. Okay, now let's test it again. PC1 should be able to ping PC3, okay, and PC1 to PC4 should be successful. All right, so take note that they are on a different VLAN, VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. Okay, so let's test that also on PC2, should be able to ping PC3 and PC4 also. All right, so next PC3 to PC1, that is on different VLAN or inter-VLAN. Okay, and the last one would be PC4 to PC1 and PC4 to PC2. All right, so that's how easy it is to configure a legacy inter-VLAN routing. Okay, so the disadvantage would be you need multiple physical router interfaces for LAN, okay, so to configure several VLANs.